Sorry, I realized that I've been muted that whole time. So let's start that all over. Hey, everybody. We are doing a test stream, and I'll be answering any of your questions. So feel free to drop those in, and hopefully I see them. But I got an email the other day that was talking about whether podcast editors should have a podcast. Personally, I don't think so. There's a couple of reasons where that might come in handy. If you're someone who is trying to come into podcast editing without already having edited podcasts, it can be really the best way to get experience editing podcasts. Create your own. Even if you don't publish it, it gets you working with dialogue and listening to what you need to learn in order to edit. The other place where having a podcast really comes in handy is to become really familiar with the equipment that you use, the equipment and the processes that are used during content creation. And there are so many podcast editors who they know how to do the work, but they're not exactly that comfortable with the equipment side of things. And I think for podcast editors, we're sort of at a disadvantage because the biggest podcast editing community that I'm aware of on Facebook, they won't talk about creating content. They won't talk about the equipment involved. So that means those of us who edit but don't have a strong background in the equipment, we don't really have a place to go to get those types of questions answered. And with so much movement in the podcasting space, from what's been traditionally an audio only format to increasingly a video format as well, there's a lot of new stuff for us to be learning. Cameras, lighting, those two things alone. But then you start factoring in stuff like streaming, shorts, just content creation in general. We're moving away from having to be just experts in audio and what works in the podcasting space to being able to help our clients with strategies that are going to help them grow and leverage these newer avenues that are available to them with the use of video. So do I think that podcast editors need to have a podcast? No, because I don't have a podcast. I've never had one, though YouTube says I have a couple of them. But I came into this with previous audio experience. For people who are new to it, it's going to be tougher to gain that experience without having a means to record your own content to play with. That was one of the reasons I started the YouTube channel, was to be able to start working with video, learning how to edit video, learning everything that it takes to use YouTube and to use it to help market your company. All of these things. I'm not someone comfortable on camera. I never have been. I never had a desire to do it. But to be able to help out in our company, to be able to take some of the work off of Tara's plate, I had to learn new skills. I had to learn how to shoot video. I had to understand what makes video look good. I had to start learning how to edit. All of these different things. And we ended up here. So I think the bottom line is, if we want to offer editing services to clients, we have to understand everything that is involved in the process. If you want to only work with audio clients, that's fine. But if you start having clients who want video, how are you going to be able to help them if you don't learn video? It's, to me, I don't want to learn how to do something with someone else's content while someone else is paying me. That's not the best way to learn, because you're always with your back up against the wall and your clients are paying for that learning experience. That might be good for us, but maybe not so good for them, as their content might not look as good as it would if they used an editor who understood video and knew how to edit it. I'm not sure if there's anything else I can go on and on about on that specific topic. So let's go back to a topic Matt and I have been trying to talk about over the last couple of weeks, and let me see if I can find out if any of the chats are working. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of comments, so they are working. And obviously, I'm getting a lot of traction on YouTube Shorts or the vertical feed. I am in the US. I'm not sure who a lot of you people are, but I'm Jesse. I'm a US-based podcast editor and content creator. If you're new to the channel, I want to say welcome. And this is really just a test of the streaming software to see how it works, to see if I can get it to work, because I've been using Ecamm and it works fine by myself, but as soon as I bring in a guest, it starts to sort of fall apart. So let me try something else. Okay, so we're getting comments being doubled up, which isn't great, but it's better than not getting comments. But let's go on to talking about podcasting equipment, more specifically the Rodecaster and podcast mixers. Matthew and I have been trying to talk about this, and we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. And basically, we have mixed emotions about the Rodecaster Duo, Rodecaster Pro, whichever. It's a good device, but it's not necessarily, how do I put this? It's not necessarily the best device for a lot of podcasters. It's a consumer audio product. That's the bottom line. It has a ton of features, many of which you're paying for and you're not using as a podcaster. It's a great device for live streamers where you need that hands-on control and the ability to do some mixing on your audio while you're going out live. Most podcasters, you don't need that. It doesn't, you're paying for a lot of features that aren't being used. And the more features that get added in, the more complex the piece of equipment gets. That was one of the things Matt and I had talked about, was we found the UI UX to be a little bit obtuse. It's a little, not necessarily that straightforward to finding your way to what you need to find. The documentation for it is also kind of like that. In comparison, I've used the Mackie DLZ, or technically the DLZ XS, which is the competitor to the Rodecaster Duo. And for me, I found the user interface and experience just a lot better with that one. Everything's sort of called what you expect it to be called. It's easy to find everything you're looking for. They have a really well thought out menu system. Pretty much everything is within one touchscreen push away. Whereas with the Rodecaster, it seems like you're always at least let me start that over. On the Rodecaster, you're usually about 2 menus away from what you need at any given time, unless it's something you can control with the faders or physical control. From that aspect, I find the Mackie DLZ to be a better option. On top of that, another issue I had with the Rodecaster is with the headphones I use, they're Allo Audio S4Xs. They're high sensitivity headphones. When I plug them into the Rodecaster, there's a high level of white noise, and that's not normal. I had to get a little device that plugs in between the headphones and the Rodecaster. Now I'm drawing a blank on the name. A noise isolator, to be able to use the headphones without all that noise. I shouldn't have to do that with a $500 product. I don't have to do that with the Mackie. I don't have to do that with any of the other kind of name brand audio interfaces I use. The only other one I've had that issue with is the Elgato Wave, not Wave. The Wave probably has the same issue, but the Elgato Stream Deck XLR dock or XLR hub, I'm not sure which they call it. The Stream Deck Plus with the XLR connector attached to it, or audio interface, however you want to look at it. But really, for me, I think that for most podcasters who either do remote shows or solo shows, or at most yourself and one other person in person, an audio interface is going to be your better bet because they're simpler, they're easier to set up. You don't have all of the menu diving that you have with the Rodecaster or even the Mackie. I think simplicity oftentimes trumps a bunch of features that you don't always need. And if you're doing post-production anyway, you don't need to have the EQ and compression and all of the stuff that a Rodecaster will offer you. Again, you're just paying for stuff you don't actually need. You have more control during post-production, especially if you're not really comfortable setting up EQ and compression for live use. Because if you overdo it, you can't undo that later. One of the other issues that Matt brought up during that live stream was that he's dealing with latency. Latency is when you talk, but then what you hear in your headphones is delayed just enough that it feels off to you. He's gone through and he believes he's turned off all of the effects, all of the processing, and there's still just enough delay that he can't really use it. That's problematic. Not everybody's going to be that sensitive to latency. I had problems with that at first, and then I found some setting that I'd missed because, again, the Rodecaster has kind of a convoluted workflow. I found something I'd missed, and that finally solved the latency issue for me. Hopefully, that's the issue with Matt, and he's able to find that setting and not have the latency. But as it stands, he's not really super thrilled with the Rodecaster. I do find it interesting seeing all of these comments from all over the world, people from India and London. Apparently I look like an AI character. I guess that's better than sounding like an AI character, which I admit I probably do sound like AI. Part of the fun of not having a bunch of prosody in my voice. But not a whole lot I can do about that. What else can we talk about during this test stream? Let's see. Oh, let's talk about the Vocaster, which is what I would recommend instead of the Rodecaster 2 or the Mackie DLZ XS if you only need to connect 2 mics. That's the best audio interface you're going to find for the money. It seems like, and I'm guessing here, I'm going to guess the Focusrite probably in 2021 or 2022. These were released in June of 2022. The Vocasters were. I think Focusrite saw how much podcasting had exploded during the pandemic, so they created an audio interface for podcasters. It's a really good audio interface. It's got everything you would want. 1 or 2 mics. The Solo has 1 mic, 1 headphone port. The Vocaster 2 has 2 headphone ports, 2 mic ports. You have auto gain. You can connect your phone via Bluetooth or USB. You have an output to connect directly to a camera. These are things most audio interfaces do not offer. But they made one mistake, and they just made too many of them. They probably overestimated the demand for something like this while also not putting a whole lot of effort into marketing them. And then there's just the fact that if we go back 3 years and think about the internet way back then, before AI and all of that stuff, the internet was really slow to get up to speed with new things. So if you Googled something like the best audio interface for podcasting, the Focusrite 2i2 would tend to lead that list. You started then seeing the Rodecaster Pro, which is way overkill for anybody who needs just 2 channels. But because of how slow the internet is to learn things, I think Focusrite never could compete with the 2i2, their own product, when it came to getting the Vocasters into the hands of podcasters. So it seems like they have a warehouse full of these that they've been sitting on and trying to blow out for the last 2 years. Last year they were selling them at something like $69 for the Vocaster 1 and $99 for the Vocaster 2. This year during the holidays, they're down to $39 and $69 respectively. You're not going to find anything in that price range that will compete. Fifine just sent me one of their 1-channel audio interfaces, and I think it sells for $50 or $55, and it's 16-bit, 44.1, 1 headphone, no frills, no loop back. It's just a bare bones, lowest, what's the best way to put it? Just the cheapest way to get into an audio interface that you can. For just a few dollars more, you can get an audio interface, the Vocaster 2, that just tramples it. like I said, you're not going to find anything better at that price point. So let me take a water break and see if I can find anything else to talk to. I'm talking to myself. So something else I can talk about. I guess the next thing I can talk about is with Tara's new job, I'm having to help her find some new equipment for video production, a space that is kind of new for me, and that's on location type shoots. Not typical types of photo or video shoots, but like trainings. So not something where you set up a couple of cameras on a tripod, you have people mic'd up with lav mics, not polished sit down type shoots. These are paramedics in training. So to get the best shots of them in their training and going through all of this, she's asked me to help her find cameras that we can attach to them to get that first person view, and also being able to find mics that we can also attach wirelessly to be able to capture all of the audio. The mic side is pretty easy for me. We've been using the Rodecaster Wireless Go's and Wireless Pros, so I'm familiar with those. But we wanted to find something smaller. So I started looking into competitors. I know I've heard a lot of talk about DJI and Hollyland. I think the Hollyland Lark is their little wireless mic. But DJI, they have just a ton of options for the content creator. So trying to find stuff that is all in the same ecosystem is what we're looking at. So right now, I'm probably leaning towards the DJI Mic 3. It's like 1 inch by 1 inch by, I think, 0.6 inches. Something like that. No, it weighs 0.6 ounces. Either way, it's really small, really light. It attaches magnetically, records, I believe, internally as well as to the receiver. The receiver can be connected directly into the camera. So we've got that part covered, or it can connect directly into a DSLR or mirrorless camera. So we've got the audio part covered. The other part was the video camera. DJI just announced it was a Nano something. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's also, I think, like 1.8 inches. Not that big, but has a good size sensor. So I think we've found a good solution for these trainings to be able to capture that first person viewpoint, capture the audio up close, but also be able to have a wider shot capturing all of the activity that's on a tripod. This will still be a pretty easy setup for one person, but these are the types of things that it really helps to have experience with content creation, video recording, audio recording, to know what's out there, to know what you want to look for to get the best that you can. If you don't have enough of a background, it's going to be hard to recommend this stuff to people. If anybody has questions out there, feel free to drop them in the chat. Okay, so if nobody has anything else to, any other comments, questions, I was really hoping to catch people at a better time than 8 o'clock in the morning to see if anybody had questions. So let me just take a look here. Okay, so the Zoom P4 seems to be finally starting to hit the shelves or land in people's mailboxes. I think that's really going to be a good alternative to the Rodecaster Pro or the Rodecaster Duos, because so many people gravitated towards the original P4, which for me it was just Zoom being Zoom, building to a price point and cutting corners at places where you really shouldn't be cutting corners. They limited it to 16-bit 44.1K recording. That's fine for playback, but for anybody who's recording audio on site, you want at least 24-bit audio. That gives you a lot more margin of error when setting your levels. You don't have to worry as much about clipping or the noise floor. So that was the biggest reason I couldn't recommend the Zoom P4. But with the P4 Next, they've remedied that by going to 24-bit 48K. And in my experience, Zoom's preamps have been kind of noisy, especially at higher gain levels. Matthew made the comment that maybe that's why they added the AI noise reduction into the Zoom P4 Next to help reduce the noise from their preamps. Whether that's the reason for it or not, maybe they were just looking for a way to be able to slap AI onto the packaging and the marketing copy. Either way, we'll find out. Chances are it's not going to be as good as what we can do in post-production. At least so far, I haven't heard any real-time noise reduction that sounds remotely as good as what we can accomplish in post with high-quality plugins. It's just not possible at this point in time to be able to clean up audio with minimal artifacting in real time. It just takes too much. But we will see how the Zoom P4 Next performs. I think it's going to put the PreSonus Mixcast 4, maybe it's not PreSonus. I can never remember who makes the Mixcast 4. But the Mixcast 4, I think, is going to just completely disappear. It never got much attention from the reviews I've read and the videos I've watched about it. It seems like just a cheap version of a Rodecaster with kind of an even more clunky workflow, if that's possible. But the P4 Next, I think that combined with Mackie and Rode coming out with the stripped down two channel Rodecaster and DLZs, I don't think there's a market for the Mixcast 4. There really never seemed to be much of one. But I think in 2025, there is no market for it because you can get a decent looking 4-channel recorder in the P4 Next that has everything you need to get recordings. It may not have all of the bells and whistles of a Rodecaster, but like I talked about earlier, most people don't need that. Actually, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud to myself. It's possible that I'm not even seeing the chat from the main YouTube feed. So let me see if I can go in there real quick. Give me just a moment. Okay, so no, I haven't missed any messages there. It looks like all messages are coming in through the chat, which is good to know. I've spent 2 days trying to get all of this stuff sorted out. We've got different layouts. And as usual, the Rodecaster, actually, I think that's me. Yeah. So we've got some scenes set up. Or if we have Matt here or another guest, that's the next thing I'll have to test out. Let me see if there's any questions in here that I can answer. Let's see. Yeah, I'll have to, oh no, where'd things go? That wasn't good. Not sure why it switched back that way. But I usually have some questions from Reddit ready to go, but today, with it being a test stream, I didn't have that set up. I'm trying to think if there's, let's check Facebook, see if I can find anything. Let's see. I mean, here's one that was kind of interesting. Talking about intros for podcasts. I see so many people who want to kind of overthink intros, and really what I see a lot of people doing is just mimicking what other people do, which a lot of people that are being mimicked are just copying what they saw. So we have all of these shows that have decided you need that quick hook, cold open, whatever you want to call it, to start out a show. Other people want this long introduction. And depending on the type of show you have, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. It all really depends on the audience. Listen to your audience because they're the ones who are listening and watching your content. Going to YouTube, one of the biggest things people stress to you is the importance of just getting started. No one's going to sit around on YouTube and wait 45 seconds, a minute for you to really get into what your episode is about. So I think the sooner you can get into letting people know what your episode is about, that's going to be the best thing. You don't necessarily need a 30-second piece of music for branding. There's a lot of TV shows that have like a 5-second audio brand, and that's all you need, and you get started. I think, I'm not sure how I said that. I'm talking about TV shows that have, instead of a long produced intro, they have just a like 5-second, 3-second, 10-second audio brand, sound, something that is used for branding the show. but it's not a piece of music. I think the same concept works really well for YouTube, for podcasts. You need something there. Well, you don't need. I have to wonder if we even really need that branding stuff. I guess for podcasts, it's still important because if you have a bunch of shows queued up, it helps people identify things, especially if you're doing something like a cold open. But from my perspective, I'd rather hear the host start the show out and introduce the episode. Doesn't matter what type of show you have. If it's a narrative, an interview, whatever. Just let me know what the show is about right away. I'm not someone who likes the cold opens because it doesn't tell me anything. And as a podcast editor, I have this conversation with clients all the time because you've got, a 45-minute, 60-minute interview. You're trying to find one clip that is going to resonate with all of your audience enough to get them to want to continue watching. I think you have a better opportunity to do that by having the host record after the show has been recorded an intro that introduces quickly who you have on the show and what you're talking about. Just a really quick overview. That way, I know what the show's about, what I can look forward to hearing about or learning about before deciding whether to invest my time into it. So that's always been one of my pet peeves with podcasts is this idea that we need to do what talk radio does or what the news does or what we've seen TV shows do. Those are all different things. We should be trying to figure out what's best for our specific show and, more importantly, our audience. That's my view on things, and I know I'm probably an outlier in all of that, but that's what I've seen. That's my personal preference. Let's see what else. And I'm just looking at the Podcast Editors Club Facebook group. There was a post. Anyone using Riverside Magic Audio feature? Does it sound robotic to you? I mean, I haven't used Magic Audio since they first put it out. I'm assuming it's gotten better over time, but when I did first try it out, it was not good. It was like Adobe's Enhanced Speech, which I really do need to do like a 2025 or 2026 shootout with all of these different tools again to see how much they've improved, if they've improved, because a lot of the plugins, they don't really update them unless you're a Sentize and DX Revive Pro. I think Pro's gotten at least 3 updates since it was released. Each update has new algorithms, but none of the others come up with, why do I keep saying that? Most of the other plugins don't update with new algorithms or new features. Those are always new versions of the plugin that they want you to upgrade to. Like Supertone Clear hasn't had any updates. I can't even remember. I mean, Isotope RX, there's still some people using that for audio cleanup. They come up with their near annual updates. That RX11 didn't come out till earlier this year. I was just realizing that usually they come out around sometime in the fall with the new version, but they were so late with RX11 that doesn't seem odd that they wouldn't come out with a new version before spring of 2026. But yeah, I really do need to do a new shootout to see how mainly Descript, Riverside, and Adobe, their sound enhancement cleaner uppers have improved or devolved, depending on the case, over the last year or so. Yeah, I haven't tested any of those in quite a while, but it wouldn't surprise me if Riverside still sounds a little robotic. Here's Matthew with a comment or response to some video. I'm curious to hear what people think about this, but it's the simplest application for voice-to-voice models. If you can capture the intonation, pacing, etc. of the original voice enough to layer a completed model based on original vocal patterns, of course it's going to work. What I want to know is how long it took and how much it cost, your time and the tools required, and compare this to a reshoot. The next thing I want you to think about is whether this is something that should be a standard repair offering, or whether this falls into the same camp as moving the S sounds around to fix a plural, because this is novel, but as a general application, I wonder if it circumvents anything in our process, or whether it's a just in case. And okay, so the video has the caption, "Can you fix audio from a mic that didn't record?" 2 weeks ago, a client asked me this after realizing their guest's mic failed mid-recording. All they had was muddy camera audio from 15 feet away. For this client, it had to be perfect or we'd reshoot. So I tried something I'd never done. My take on that is I don't like voice cloning. I understand that there are certain times where a reshoot just isn't possible, but unless we're talking about like a sentence or a word, I'm not a fan of taking the transcript and having an AI clone of the person read the entire transcript, because it's doing the guest a disservice. It's not going to reflect well on them. They're going to sound like an AI bot. It's going to lack the inflections and the humanness of the responses that were originally there. My advice to this person would be to just go ahead and do a reshoot or scrap the entire episode. And no, I'm not an AI. Sorry to burst your bubble. I might sound like one, I might look like one on TV, but I assure you, I am a real human. Just kind of a robotic human. That's part of being on the spectrum. But thank you for asking. But yeah, with that kind of content, it needs to be human. And as far as Matt's question, I do look at it as kind of similar to people going around and, what was that word? Not frankenbiting stuff together. Basically taking bits of words and putting them together to fix for like incorrect pronunciations. I've seen editors who will spend 10, 15, I don't know for sure, but they said they'll spend 10 to 15 minutes trying to piece bits of words together to fix an improper pronunciation. Adding S's to make a word plural because it didn't come through loud enough on the recording. Stuff like that. These are things that aren't necessary, but so many editors stress over. Can we use AI to help fix a situation where the mic dropped out in the middle and all you had was the audio from the camera? Yes. Is it going to be something that your audience is going to want to listen to? Probably not. And there's the whole part about the guest. Is the guest going to be okay with having most of their appearance on your show being done by an AI reading the transcript? Personally, that's not what I would want. I don't know if I'm just an outlier there, but that's my personal preference. I would rather redo it or just scrap it all together. But that's me. I wonder what the consensus was in this thread. Well, we've got this one. At what environmental cost? I'm not sure where people get all of their information, but all cloud computing costs. There's environmental costs to all cloud computing. With AI use, the energy, the environmental impacts come from the training of everything, not the everyday use of the tools. It's something that we do need to figure out, but this whole idea that we can't use AI because of the environmental impacts, or there's a few other kind of generalized reasons why people say we shouldn't be using AI. I think in the case of replacing an appearance, maybe that comes down to the person who is being replaced first and foremost. But the person who posted said, all of this was trained locally on my own computer, so very little, thankfully. Again, that's missing the part that the tool being used for this did take up a lot of energy to train. So there's conflicting viewpoints on that, but bottom line is AI's here. It's out of the bag. It's a part of life now. We have to accept that, and the companies who are responsible for creating this stuff, they need to be responsible for finding ways to decrease the energy usage, decrease the impacts on the environment. I know Google has said that we're at a place where, they're talking about how they were able to reduce energy usage by like 1%. And that's a significant reduction. It might not sound like it, but it was. If you're asking what I'm talking about today, I'm talking about podcasting, podcast editing, audio work, dialogue editing, stuff like that. If that's of interest to you, stick around, ask questions. If that's not your thing, that's fine too. It was nice seeing you. Yeah, that was pretty much the end of that. I mean, another one, and this goes to a client that we're working with right now, when it comes to filler words, like editing videos, podcasts, taking filler words out. A lot of clients don't understand that we can't just take out each and every If you have somebody who ums after every breath, someone who every second and they're talking, and it's going to be very difficult to cut all of that out without it sounding really choppy or heavily over, not heavily, over edited. I mean, to me, if you can hear that something's been edited, it's been poorly edited. And that's not what we're going for. In my world, our goals are to edit, to make things as concise as we can while still sounding natural and like it hasn't been edited. That's what we gave to the client. The client came back saying, well, there's a lot of filler words in here and stutters, and I listen to podcasts who don't have any of that. They cut all of that out. It's like, you don't know how each person actually speaks. If you watch my content, you'll know that I'm not someone who sits around and ums. It's just not in my vocabulary unless I'm using it as an example like I did a minute ago. I still use some filler words. I probably overuse stuff like so and but. It's the way I speak. When it comes to cutting all of that stuff out, though, we can only do so much. It depends on how the words are spoken. If we can get a clean cut, can we cut it out without the inflection before and after that word changing? Does it change the pacing by removing it? There's a lot of things that go into our thinking when we edit. And at the end of the day, we can't change how people speak. It's just not possible because each one of us has our own kind of personal way of speaking, our own natural pacing. I'm someone who speaks fairly slowly, which might make things a little bit of a pain to watch a live stream because you can't watch it at 1.25 or 1.5 to make me sound like I know what I'm talking about and I'm talking at a normal speed. That's the way I talk. For someone who talks a lot faster, it makes it even tougher to cut all of those things out because when there's not much of a gap and we shrink it even more, then the words are too close to each other and it just sounds unnatural. It's like watching a bunch of TikToks or YouTube shorts. You can't process everything and it's very choppy. It's just not a good experience for the users unless you just want to go in and watch a bunch of mindless content one after another. But it looks like we're at about the 1 hour mark. I'm going to go ahead and end this here. It was an interesting test. Next, I'll have to see if there's a way to, how well it works to bring Matt in or a guest in remotely using this. I've been using Meld Studio for the stream today, basically trying to figure out if Meld can do what I need it to do, or if I need to look at StreamYard for being able to stream with guests. So this was a promising first start to moving away from Ecamm for streaming. I paid for 1 year. It's been kind of a nightmare when it comes to getting guests in. I can't give them money for a second year. So that's what I'm doing here. Thank you for watching.